You did talk about aquatic animals being issues, but we have talked about alligators coming here.
You've talked about alligators.
The rest of us have talked about alligators.
Yes, I've voiced my
Andy's
concerns about alligators.
Alligator hater.
I'm not an alligator hater. Alligators one.
Hey, what's up? And welcome back to another episode of Aikman Bros podcast. I'm James.
I'm Andrew.
We wanted to let you guys know that we are on Spotify as well as YouTube, so you can check us out on both of those. I think it's been growing a little bit on Spotify, and so if you're
Day by day
in your car listening, you can check that out. I think we've also talked about bringing on potential guests in the future to be on the podcast. So
hopefully our room is a little more complete before that happens.
Yeah. So we would love to hear your thoughts on if you have guests in mind, people you want to see on the show, to let us know what those would be. So comment on who you'd like to see come on the show. And if you have any connections with anybody, we'd definitely be up for hearing those out for sure.
Yeah.
So we also have a new logo. So the park itself has been going through kind of a rebranding, it's always been Aikman Wildlife Adventure. Wildlife Adventure was always what stood out. We're now becoming more than just a wildlife adventure location. And so rebranded to put more emphasis on Aikman, and then kind of transitioning that into the podcast as well.
Yep.
You feeling okay today?
Yeah.
Usually you're a little more talkative than this.
Yeah.
In the past, we've done trivia questions. And so our producer, Adam, trivia question today is, what color is a giraffe's tongue?
I mean, I feel like it's obviously not the normal color, or why would it be this question? So I feel like it's either a purple or blue.
Or potentially black. And polar bears have a crazy colored tongue too. So I just can't remember if I'm thinking of black for giraffe or black for polar bear.
Yeah.
But drum roll for the answer.
Purple.
It is purple.
I knew it was one of those more quote unquote exotic colors. I didn't think it was the black, but I did kind of forget about that.
Yeah.
So,
and they're freaking long too. I mean, they can wrap around your head. I think it's like 18 inches long. So it's
it's one of the reasons why they're, in terms of hopefully in the future when we have giraffe encounters, that's one of the kind of perks is like when you go to actually feed a giraffe, you actually get a glimpse of just how long that tongue is when they stick it out to grab a piece of lettuce or whatever it is that you're giving to them. So,
yeah. So speaking of that, we have discussed multiple times about giraffe coming to the park and kind of what that looks like in regards to thoughts on what animals would 100% never be coming to the park. And he's going to have...
I feel like this comes a lot easier to me.
He's going to have a different answer than me. I hate speaking in absolutes. So I hate using the word never, but I'll operate under the assumption of right now, currently, what we have to work with, elephants couldn't come here. Okapi would not be an option to come here.
I would also say that large primates, gorillas, would probably not be feasible.
What's even chimpanzees?
He wants to say now, front. I want to say ever, just for the sheer size, and then going back to the whole primate thing with transmittable diseases.
Well, yeah, and most people probably don't realize how strong gorillas actually are. Like if they were weightlifters, they
10
would
times 10 times as strong.
I don't know the numbers. I just know they would far surpass any of the.
You have to imagine a gorilla is stronger than a chimpanzee, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm pretty sure a chimpanzee is like 5 times, has the strength of like 5 humans. So you can only imagine a gorilla is insane.
Yeah. So when it comes to primates, we're looking at like the tamarins or the marmosets.
Yeah. Things that fit in the palm of your hand. But no, I'm fairly confident with elephants too, regardless of now or in the future or whatever. One, from a enclosure size standpoint, like, yes, I guess we could technically always buy more land and, in the craziest scenario, move the actual park to expand that way. But like, if that doesn't happen, then it's literally, we don't have enough land for elephants. But then on top of that, it's the actual caring for elephants is in a whole nother ballpark in terms of
a ton, and would need different fencing than any of the fencing we have here for the different animals.
Like, they're not. That's a very specific type of keeper that we would probably have to 100% have someone that had hands-on past experience to actually manage an elephant or an elephant herd or whatever. So I'm fairly confident that's probably. And then on top of that, when Illinois weather, like, to do it right, we'd probably have to do some sort of pretty impressive indoor facility to accommodate for the times during the year that it's.
I will say there's a huge elephant sanctuary down in Tennessee, I believe. So
yeah, but I feel like I've read
cold there.
There's mixed feelings on that particular place.
Well,
because I think a lot of the elephants that were quote unquote retired from the circus, I think I remember reading that years ago in terms of when they shut down majority of the big circuses, that was the place that they went to potentially. And there was some drama or accusations or something that they didn't necessarily, they were calling themselves a sanctuary, but they didn't necessarily have the proper type of care or facility set up for that many elephants.
But bottom line, from our standpoint, our current footprint is not big enough to have elephants. So they are social animals. So usually they need to be in at least 3 to 4. Normally only have 1 male.
Man, I feel like to do an elephant enclosure right, you need at least a minimum of 10 acres.
Yeah. If
not, depending on the size of the herd that you're having, if not closer to 20 acres if it's a larger type of group. And then, like I said, because of where we're located geographically from a winter standpoint and everything like that, that's a 10 acre to 20 acre outdoor type of area, but then also a large kind of indoor area that when they have to be indoors because of the temperatures or whatnot, they're not just in a small little confined type of stall type of setup to where I've seen, I don't know if it's out in California or if it's actually even in the States, but I've seen pictures of a facility that it's almost like a giant type of dome that it's kind of like all skylight type of things for the ceiling, and I'm almost positive it has like an upper viewing area for the public and all this stuff, but basically a very large indoor complex that is set up specifically designed for elephants. And I'm just assuming that it's wherever it's actually located, it's because they have the same issues that we potentially have with parts or most of the year. It's maybe not the most ideal climate for elephants to thrive. So I feel like that falls with a lot. In my mind, a hippo would be in that same sort of category, to where hippos might even be more drastic from having an indoor thing because they're even more aquatic than what an elephant is in terms of living a lot of their life actually in the water. So hippos would fall in the same category, at least as of right now. From a space standpoint, we wouldn't have the ability to have a proper outdoor enclosure on top as well as an indoor facility.
But even just going back to elephants, there's a lot of red tape and more political issues involved with the elephants.
Oh, yeah.
To where that would make it complicated. They seem to be definitely one of the hot topic animals.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Controversy follows.
There is definitely a group of animals that if a facility has it, you are, in which isn't necessarily a bad thing to be on a more of a kind of under a microscope type of thing. But there definitely are animals out there that put you on the crosshairs of potential certain groups or whatnot. Speaking of red tape, another one that I just thought of would be panda bear. So pretty sure pandas, you have to actually rent them from China. And that would be, didn't we look up one time what the actual, I mean, it was some insane
I think it was
cost.
over $1 million.
Yeah. And that's, I don't even want to think about if, you know, if for some reason that would get sick or, you know, God forbid it would pass away for some reason in terms of, you can talk about red tape. Like that just seems insane. Koala bears probably be in the same.
Well, koalas and duck-billed platypus. I mean, China kind of has a monopoly on panda bears and Australia.
I don't think we'd even want koala bears. I mean,
because I think I remember they like sleep 23 hours a day. So.
And they only eat eucalyptus leaves. So we'd have to import those. So there's actually quite a few, there's probably quite a few animals, if you think about it, that wouldn't really make sense. I mean, we would be way better off in terms of maybe it's not as uncommon as some of those animals, but we'd be way better off from a saving standpoint, saving more common animals, even if that meant that we were able to save 4 or 5 animals compared to the cost of, you know, 1 elephant or something like that. So there's probably a lot. Like a polar bear would be another one that there's tons of bears that actually need saving, but a polar bear is another one of those more complicated ones because of the kind of aquatic nature of it, and then also the temperature parameters that a polar bear would have to be in as opposed to a black bear or grizzly bear. And like from a USDA standpoint, I'm assuming they get way more calls about black bears and grizzly bears and brown bears than what they do with polar bears. Unless maybe, you know, the field agent that lives up in Alaska or the Arctic like that in terms of cubs or whatever they get brought in. But other than those extreme cases, I would assume that we would be better off working with local Fish and Wildlife with black bears from, you know, not so much northern Illinois, but Wisconsin, Michigan, as opposed to building something specifically for a polar bear.
Yeah. But I mean, you did talk about aquatic animals being issues, but we have talked about alligators coming here.
You've talked about alligators.
The rest of us have talked about alligators.
Yes, I've voiced my one. They grow up, so American alligator gets at least probably on average 8 to 10 feet, if not 10 to 12 feet, or potentially bigger than that. So yes, it might be fairly simple type of thing when it's a little hatchling or whatever, but thinking about the enclosure size needed for when it gets fully mature, you obviously have the safety standpoint from a keeper area, but then it goes back. Biggest issue is it would probably be a different story if we were southern U.S., but it goes back to Illinois weather. So that's a indoor type of enclosure on top of having some sort of outdoor enclosure too. Now, from a doability standpoint, an alligator is probably way more doable than a hippo. if you kind of compare those two, or an elephant or whatever, but still doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right thing just to dive in without actually answering all my concerns that I have.
Well, but I think even though they get big, they still get smaller. And I think that 240 million year old crocodile they found, I don't know if you know anything about that.
Yeah, I wish I was able to. I tried to figure out how to pronounce it, and it's almost like the Simbacuba type of kind of wording. So I'm not entirely sure how they actually pronounce it, but yeah, supposedly I think it was about anywhere between 16 to 18 feet. So I mean, large for supposedly when it roamed back 240 million years ago in the Jurassic period, it was the apex predator. But it was, I think they discovered it. I think it might be over in Africa. It's where they actually discovered the remains of it. But something like that could easily be, in the future for a future museum phase or something. It's a crocodile species, but supposedly crocodile species back then look a lot different than what we envision crocodiles looking. So it was a little more not so close to the ground in terms of a little longer legs on it. So it looks a very interesting type of animal, and 16 feet long, with a mouthful of teeth. That's impressive regardless of if it's living today or not living today. But that would definitely be a potential unique one that, could easily show up in one future phase in the museum. I know we've talked about crocodilians. There are some very large crocodiles that used to roam, 40, even potentially 50 feet long.
I mean, there were crocodiles that ate dinosaurs at watering holes, just like crocodiles in Africa eat wildebeest.
Yeah, so we've definitely talked about kind of some of those more impressive type of ones, and the issue with that is having the space to house a 40-foot museum piece, whereas this one would be, definitely a lot more doable from a size standpoint, and still kind of at least dabbled into the lineage of crocodiles. Pretty sure we do have one. I think it was the first crocodile species that's actually potentially sometime this year we'll have it on display in the museum. But it's a tiny, smallest crocodile, not first, smallest crocodile species. So it's I forget how. I mean, I don't know. It might be around 2 feet in length. But yeah, a lot of people don't realize that crocodiles, they are one of the oldest animals from a living standpoint. I mean, there are crocodiles that ate dinosaurs, and there's crocodiles that eat blue wildebeest today. So they've been around for a long time. So they have big, small. I mean, they run the gamut in terms of sizes and shapes and all this stuff. But yeah, I think it was about 5 days ago I saw that article. Didn't click on it or anything, but yeah.
You said they discovered it in Africa.
I want to say it was in Africa. But yeah, maybe Adam can put up something that actually shows the location of it or something like that.
Right.
Or a clip or a link to the article. Might be able to put that in the description below.
Well, and we were talking about the museum, and we are looking at what the next expansion phase is on that. So we'll kind of just throw that out there as a teaser, and then maybe more to come on that in future episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, we're always thinking about how to continue to grow the museum and kind of make it turn into its own, and kind of the exciting part and also the complicated part is always trying to figure out what makes sense from animals to include and what not to include, and what ones make sense to kind of get done at the same time from a phase standpoint. And we kind of always like to have, if we have another expansion of the museum, we always kind of like to have a more or less kind of a single showcase piece. And So like the expansion that we just did that was open last year, it would have been the Carnotaurus was kind of the big showstopper piece. So we always like to have at least one of those kind of early on in the, first part of the new edition that gets open to the public. So it kind of ties everything together when maybe the space isn't completely filled out yet, because we are having to do kind of different phases and all that stuff with all the animals that we want to have in the space. So just trying to figure out going back and forth on what animal makes most sense, what focus we want to do, whether that's more focused on kind of dinosaur route or the prehistoric mammal route, and just trying to find a good common ground so we get a little bit of both and kind of appease all parties involved.
Right. So on that note, we're going to call a wrap for today. Remember, we are on Spotify and YouTube, and if you have any ideas for guests you'd like to see on the show, we're up for hearing what those are. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Later.
Cool story, bro.